What's new with Rival AXS? Well, quite simply, everything. This is a serious update to Sram's Shimano 105 Di2 Rival. Perhaps the biggest change, however, is in the shifters. Out goes the tall, fairly ugly shifter of old, replaced with a new, super low profile, much more ergonomic design that's lifted directly from force axis, which in turn got it from red axis. On the previous design, the piston inside the hood was in a vertical position. That made the pommel really quite tall, and they've done a bit of kind of Jenga engineering here and simply orientated that piston horizontally. It's enabled them to package everything much lower profile, much more ergonomic. And when you put into that as well that they've reprofiled the shift lever, so you've got these nice indents at the top, gives you really nice one finger braking from the top of the hoods. Down in the drops there's a slight out sweep on the levers as well, which puts them within reach. And for what actually looks so premium and what is a third tier group set, those levers are now carbon. That's super impressive. And now a pair of these levers, and including the brakes, drops 72 grams over the old version. Sadly, they don't feature the hidden button on the inside face of the hoods. But then again, Shimano 105 Di2 doesn't have its hidden buttons on the top of its hoods. So, you know, it's like for like. Other major change here, and one that also adds to the really nice aesthetic look of new Rival, is the chain set. Out goes the old matte aluminium chain set of old, which looked, well, a bit bland, a bit cheap even, replaced with this new one, which is kind of machined, angular. It's got cutouts which are directly influenced from SRAM's aluminium XO mountain bike crank, and I think just look great. Adding to that, there's a two-piece chainring, so it's direct mount, much stiffer, lots lighter. Downside is that when it comes to replacement time, you are going to need to buy the one unit, which is the two rings. A new chainring is only £120 or $140. It's still a little bit more expensive to Shimano 105, which is $79.99 for the big ring, $19.99 for the small ring. Next change, brakes. Again, out goes the rather chunky old units, now replaced with these new brakes that look sort of machined and slimmed down. Again, direct influence from the Force and the Red brakes. They're a new two-piece caliper, look really smart, use the same paceline rotors as the rest of the range. Again, big improvement there. Then we move on to the drivetrain. Rear derailleur, it's probably seen the least changes. Still got a spring clutch, it's had a really nice makeover. Front derailleur, big improvements. Slimmer, longer cage, much better at chain management, much cleaner, smoother shifts, and it's got a built-in auto trim function. So you can really cross-chain it, and you're not going to get any of that really irritating chain rasp. But saying all that, I think one of the best changes is actually the weight. Previous Rival was significantly heavier than 105 Di2. That's why 105 Di2 just ruled at this level before. This new group set comes in like for like 32 grams lighter than 105. But probably the best thing here is how much cheaper it is now. Coming in £154, that's $126 cheaper than 105 Di2 in the same spec. Even when you add in the optional power meter, SRAM Rival AXS is £9 or $39 cheaper than 105 Di2 with no power meter. Impressive stuff. That all sounds good on paper, but how does new Rival AXS perform on the road? I'm finding it really hard to justify stepping up to any of the more expensive AXS groups, and that's from somebody who owns and rides a red AXS equipped bike. Throughout the testing, or the first 3.5 days of testing on this bike, coming up to the launch, I put in 299 miles, and thanks to the AXS app, I was able to go back, look at the data, and see that I performed 2,469 rear shifts and 109 front shifts. It literally didn't put a foot wrong. And by that I mean, there were no missed shifts, there were no chain drops, there wasn't even any chain noise, because the biggest single improvement here is this front mech and the way that it auto trims, keeping it just away from the chain so you've got smooth, silent running all the time. Now, let's move on to brake performance. The way that you can now brake is so much better than the old one. You've got this beautiful little indent up here. That means when you're up on the hoods, one finger braking, down in, drops, you've got this nice out sweep, big broad lever to get great contact on. There's so much more control that when you're going downhill fast, hitting the corners and everything, you never over brake. effectively, that just makes you faster. As I said previously, they don't have the hidden button on the inside edge. Do I miss those buttons? Well, kind of. On my red AXS equipped bike, you know, I do use those buttons to switch between the screens on my Garmin. On a gravel bike, I probably would miss them more because you can assign those buttons to operate something like a dropper post. But, you know, SRAM have got to cut some costs somewhere to bring all of this tech in at this price. Now, I've said everything that's improved on this bike, you know, shifting is much, much quicker, much smoother. It still has that typical SRAM front shift logic where you press both buttons simultaneously. Now, that can feel a little slower than Shimano because Shimano just has that single button press. Both buttons simultaneously just takes a little bit more thought. Moving on to the cassette, now this is where I have deviated away from Rival AXS. There's only a 1030 or a 1036. Now my preference is somewhere in the middle. It's a 1033, so that means I've had to step up to force. Because of the way that SRAM conceived the whole AXS thing is everything's compatible with everything else and backwards compatible too. So quite easy just to step up to that force cassette on a build like this. Now that gives me the first 5 gears, there's a single tooth jump. The next 3, there's a 2-tooth jump. And then when you move up from there, the jumps get slightly bigger. But to be honest, if I'm up at this end, I am not worried about gear progression. I'm just looking for a gear that I can keep spinning, going uphill. That's it. Now, obviously there was huge changes to the front mech. Rear, not so much. It's had a bit of a style makeover. It does look nicer. The cage is a slightly different shape and it's just nicer styled. But unlike Force and Red, which both get an oversized lower pulley, this just remains the same. But to be honest, if it ain't broke, there's no need to fix it. SRAM's Rival AXS always struggled against 105 Di2 in the past. That's basically because it's heavier and it was more expensive, especially on complete bikes. Now this new Groupset is both lighter and cheaper. Now we don't know how it's going to pan out on complete bikes because this Groupset is brand new, it's only just launched. What I do know is this particular bike, the Boardman 9.4 SLR limited edition, this bike complete with carbon wheels, full carbon cockpit, and full SRAM Rival AXS is going to be £3,100, and that's pretty impressive. So if that is anything like what we're going to see, Rival AXS is going to be a winner. Rival was originally launched as a rival to 105, but it's a rival no more. SRAM should really think about changing the name of this group set because now this is the victor.